will flow through what I'm about to discuss, because we're certainly going to be in an area where we are entertaining some wild beliefs, and we're going to be doing that in a poetic, mystical manner to see how they affect us. Not because we're trying to lay anything down in concrete and try and make something exact, but because we're being moved by some memorable fancies. This was my starting point. It's mysterious looking back on this book, actually, how much William Blake is in there in terms of the development of my work and what some part of my head seemed to know was coming. There are prefigurations in there. And that's me that on this very stage back in July 2015, discussing all of this. But yeah, the summer of 1969. Years ago. There's obviously been a tremendous consideration of what all this is all about. Tumultuous, epic, mythological events that we've known all the way through are so tremendously important, but now we're coming back on them even more so. So yeah, it's incredible to contemplate that within 1 month, now I say we've got the moon landings, chances are there's probably a few people in here who actually don't believe that even happened. But, you know, from the point of view of a 10-year-old who has got up at an early time in the morning to watch it all happening, this was a big, big deal in the collective consciousness one way or another. We've just passed, in the last week or so, the 50th anniversary of the Manson murders. Now, it wasn't evident in August 1969 that Charles Manson was involved. It wasn't until months later that all came out. But obviously, with all the publicity that we've had with the Tarantino movie and so on, this is all big in the airwaves. And then of course we've got Woodstock. You know, and I've chosen the iconic image of Jimi Hendrix, you know, who performed this extraordinary set with this remarkable version of the Star Spangled Banner. All of this is just very much in the airwaves, very much in the airwaves. And in August 1969, at Beckenham we have this free festival. Now some of you may have actually seen today, I think this is really sweet, that the Beckenham bandstand, which is called the Bowie bandstand in, you know, general vernacular, has been granted Grade 2 listed status, you know, 50 years on from the events of that time. And that very photograph was on the BBC website this morning. I'd already lined this one up, you know, a couple of weeks ago, so it's interesting to see that. And the thing about that period of time and Bowie's performance is that there's something about it that kind of transcends the moment. You know, obviously it's a moment in his own incredible career because he's just had his first big hit with Space Oddity, but there's a bit more going on. When I first heard that Bowie had died, I was crying within about 30 seconds actually, so it's probably a good job that I was indoors at the time. Once I'd collected myself, the first thing I did was to post Memory of a Free Festival on Facebook. There is something about that song that evokes the spirit of the 1960s in the United Kingdom as much for me as anything on Sgt. Pepper or any of the other classics that we know from that time. And it's because of the fact that it evokes something very close to my heart, which I would broadly call psychedelic Earth Mysteries UFOlogy. Now, you know, the song Memory of a Free Festival, there are different versions of it. Most people know the album version. This is one of the versions of the album that it was on, and a lot of people probably know this cover. And there were single versions of it as well. There was a single version the following year, which some of you might know, which is kind of a bit weird. It's split into two parts over the A and B side. The beginning of it is sped up a bit. By the B side, by this time, Mick Wanson's come along. He's given it plenty on that, on the fade out. It's interesting. I tend to prefer the original version. Now, what's really, really very heartening indeed is one of our regulars, Shatty Krista Fox, regular at PLG, quite often turns up for my lectures. She's actually there at Beckenham now today. They have an event on. They have done for the last couple of years, but specifically for this big 50-year thing with Bowie. She's there now, selling some of her art and so on, and this particular artwork that she did, inspired with a kind of Glastonbury version of the idea of the sun machines coming down and we're going to have a party. She's very kindly allowed us to show this tonight. It's a nice resonance. But now to set the stage, to go into psychedelic Earth Mysteries UFOlogy, and particularly a very distinct Glastonbury flavour of that, which I tend to feel is a bit of forgotten history that is really, really important in terms of the beliefs about this place in the 70s and the way a whole bunch of things have come together here. And we're going all the way back to the 1930s, the unfortunate in Avalon and the whole, because she puts out this idea that maybe Glastonbury had been an Atlantean colony. There's a whole bunch of stuff concerning the connections of the Arthurian legends, the main characters there, with Atlantean prototypes. This is all, it certainly isn't history, but there's some strange resonance deep in the brain with this. And one of the things she suggested was that the terracing on the tour, which many people now interpret as a labyrinth, is in fact done deliberately to resemble an Atlantean temple prototype. So there are these kind of, weird arse ideas that are already surfacing, back in the 30s concerning Glastonbury and Atlantis. And this is an absolute proto-Earth Mysteries classic, John Foster Forbes, The Unchronicled Past. Forbes is making use of psychic visionaries and going out into the landscape and visiting ancient sites in the West Country as far back as 1930. And it's absolutely fascinating to contemplate a vision that a psychic lady called Olive Pixley had as far back as 1930. She went up on the tour, and with her eyes wide open, she's not closed her eyes, she's not gone into some trance state. She specifically talks about the terraces, a ritual involving drumming and singing and chanting, a lot of celebration, sounds of children and dogs, and the collective energy of these people ascending the tour creates a serpent path of more subtle energy. So there's a kind of spiral spreading around the hill. And when they get to the summit, where there used to be a stone circle, their efforts assisted a vortex descending from the sun, and the resultant energy shot out through the alignments over the land. So I'll just repeat that as the obvious motif, a vortex descending from the sun. Nature is stimulated efficaciously in the realms of plants and butterflies, what we now call the David Kingdom. And it's the combination of sound and light that does this. And he works with another psychic called Iris Campbell a lot later in the 40s. There's similar results. And this tour vision is all pretty typical of Olive Pixley's work. And some of you will be aware of the fact that John Foster Forbes was a later influence on Jean Michel's work. But it's with this guy that we really get going. And we get going into some pretty damn strange territory, it has to be said. Brinsley the Portrench became the Earl of Clancarty. He's Britain's most prestigious, as far as his social standing is concerned, ufologist. And he tried to use his position in the House of Lords to initiate top-level investigation of the subject. And he's what you might call an articulate early advocate of the ancient astronaut hypothesis. And he's also a champion of Catherine Morwood and the Glastonbury Zodiac, as we'll see, seeing her work in the context of his own very unusual interests. So, his first work, The Sky People, published in 1960. Pretty remarkable debut. Very eccentric for sure, but there are ideas in this book that have achieved a kind of longevity and that people would recognise, now people that maybe came along to the symposium, the Old Crop Circle conference here a few weeks ago, the kind of people that are regulars there and have absorbed all sorts of stuff over the last few decades would probably recognise all kinds of little resonances from Trench's work. First of all, he thought that the Garden of Eden story described events that occurred on Mars. And there are two creation accounts of Genesis, and one of them, they refer to different strains of humanity. There's Adam 1, who's galactic man, the Elohim line, and he has a godlike destiny in the stars. It's always intended. And this race has been known as the Serpent People, and they're the source of the many traditions of culture bringing deities in human form, like Osiris and Quetzalcoatl. Adam 2, the Jehovah line, were the occupants of the original Eden. Jehovah then called it Trench as a name, adopted quite recently to designate the people from somewhere else in space who deliberately created by means of their genetic science a race of human beings peculiarly adapted to perform certain definite predetermined functions. So there's a little waft of Zechariah Sitchin in there. They were created as a basic workforce, brute and unthinking. But then, the inevitable happens. The sons of God see the daughters of men. There's a bit of crossbreeding. The new strain become predominant, and a lot of the conflicted state about human minds goes back to this dual heritage. Noah's Ark was a spaceship that transported humans to Earth after the melting of the polar ice cap on Mars caused a flood. And something of this story gets woven into the Atlantean stories and gets later used again, a flood and deluge, destruction of a whole culture. Trench is in the Theosophies and Blavatskys and all this kind of stuff, so he has these ideas of the lost continents of Atlantis and Mu and so forth, and believe that Atlantis has spaceships, that it's in contact with other planets, that it had power sources that were beyond nuclear energy, and its prime was like 30,000 years ago. And then a sequence of catastrophes leading up to what we generally think of as the downfall of Atlantis in about 10,000 BC happens. So this is all wild and wacky enough to be going on with. In 1962, he follows up with Men and Man Among Mankind. Now this is notable now, this is where we really move into it. He is talking about the work of Catherine Morwood, talking about the Glastonbury Zodiac. He'd actually started corresponding with her husband just after she died. So in Trench's version, Britain's part of Atlantis that didn't sink. And he lengthens the timescale. Catherine Morwood has suggested that the Glastonbury Zodiac was constructed around about 2700 BC. But Trench extends this massively. In his version, there were Atlanteans who had realised that the final catastrophe was coming and built, in conjunction with the Sky People, a gigantic landmark which could easily be picked out from the sky on the disrupted surface of the unhappy planet. A legacy from their Atlantean forebearers, which is infinitely greater than either Stonehenge or the Great Pyramid in Egypt, the most sacred spot on Earth. In other words, our so-called Glastonbury Zodiac. And he interprets certain features of the Glastonbury configuration to support this sky people configuration. There's only one of the twins of Gemini in our Glastonbury Zodiac. That's because the other twin is in outer space. And it's to remind us, and to quote him, that the original sense of the Somerset Zodiac was in part at least to keep in the memories of the men of two planets a purpose, a promise and a prophecy. The purpose to maintain the connection between two parts of a race. That of man, which had to be separated for a time. The promise that those separated parts would in time come together to their mutual benefit, and the prophecy of the date and time of that coming back into communication, if, as we're told, the age of Aquarius is to be the age of the regeneration of man, it is to Glastonbury and to the Temple of the Stars that we must look for information regarding our immediate future. Now this really is the first indication of what I would call a cosmic millennialism, which is there very much as part of the flavour of 60s and 70s Glastonbury. This is 1962. From Britain, the world was civilised again. And you know, this is a little something maybe of the sensibilities of another Atlantic enthusiast, William Blake, when he said that all things begin and end in Albion's ancient druid rocky shore. As part of his advocacy of British preeminence, Trent suggested that Egyptian adepts, heirs to Atlantis themselves, travelled to Britain to seek out the knowledge of the most important place on the planet. Is it not feasible that the knowledge of Cyrus and his companions brought back from Britain, given them by those who are in a position to impart it at the most respected and sacred place on earth, the Temple of the Stars in Somerset, formed at least part of the groundwork upon which the Great Pyramid came to be built some millennia later? So this is absolutely wild, of course it is. Men and Mankind is republished as Temple of the Stars in 1973. Now I've got to give a quick yoke to this book, Flying Saucerers. It's a book written with a considerable difference of temperament. You know, David Clarke and Andy Roberts are not exactly like me, but there is a huge amount of extraordinary information in here about 50s and 60s ufology in this country that I'm very grateful to have imbibed. As well as this idea of the Glastonbury Zodiac and the Space Brothers, there comes a point in the early 60s where people have started to come to the conclusion that UFOs are travelling along straight lines. There'd been a French UFO flap in 1954, you know, a book had been written about it then, but it's a guy called Tony Wedd who brings this idea out in the UK in the early 60s. He's a very interesting guy, sufficient here to say that he, using psychics, using all kinds of visual means, came to the belief basically that, yeah, for sure, UFOs are travelling along ley lines. And part of the impetus that he provided was that the famous journal, The Ley Hunter, was brought into being as a result of people coming into contact with his ideas. They obviously went a long way away from where he's at in the end. But what this is the beginning of, what this is really intriguing to me, is how the UFO phenomenon, ufology, impacted on people's psyches during the 60s. in a very interesting way. This is the first indication, because what happens here is that people that are wanting to see UFOs, wanting to see what they believe are flying saucers, are going out at night. They're starting to hang out at ancient sites. They're starting to hang out at places that are marked out along ley lines. And as a result of that, well, you know, maybe they are seeing a few UFOs, but they're also getting interested in the folklore and the history of these sacred sites. And what you might now call the Earth Mysteries gains tremendous impetus from this. And it's during the mid-60s, you know, particularly from 1965 onwards, that, you know, Warminster, not that far away from here, becomes UFO central. Some outrageous stuff appears to be happening there. And I think Tony Wedd did actually do a little bit of UFO, a bit of ley line research. Ley lines were brought into all this malarkey. It's worth reading in Alien Heat to get a kind of deconstruction of what was going on there. But there's a very, very remarkable, it is almost a millennial, I think, an August bank holiday weekend, 1965, because of the publicity that had been given to all manner of outlandish phenomena and UFO sightings that were occurring in Warminster. Somewhere in the region of 10,000 people passed through what is not a very particularly large town, all hoping, you know, to see UFOs. Now this is 65, so this is not some bunch of acid head hippies. You know, this hasn't happened yet. This is not, you know, if you're familiar with the 1979 Quatermass, this is not a bunch of like millennial cultists all chanting lay, walking through the town. These are essentially, we'll call them normal people. And however much the movies of the time have got hostile aliens and alien invasions, and, you know, you should be scared of all this thing, there's clearly something really compelling here. Something very, very interesting at work. So here's a wonderful picture of a young John Michel by Glastonbury tour. When he died, a lot of people I know instantly just picked up their copy of his classic book, View Over Atlantis, and started reading that, and I totally understand that. With me, it was a flying saucer vision. I decided that that was the book that I was going to pick up and read as my way of acknowledging just how big an influence and inspiration it's been on me. Now, this is a book that comes out in 1967, and a later forward to it, you know, he admits that it's a genuine artefact of 1967. In other words, it's part of the acid-drenched mindscape of that time, and maybe some of the ideas that are in it might seem a little bit wild and wacky, but there's a lot of real insights and some really important things in there that I have just come back to again and again. And one of these is the idea that it's very, very difficult, you know, you can't realistically say that you know what the cause of the UFO phenomenon is. You can argue about it, you can say it's off-planet or it's not, but one of the things that's really interesting is to try and instead look at the effects that it has. And this is where, you know, I've already mentioned this point, if people are suddenly hanging out on Glastonbury tour, you know, deliberately going up there to see if they can see some UFOs, they might be smoking a few spliffs, they might be tripping, whatever. There is something about the history, the mythology, you know, the poetry of the place that works its way into their consciousness, and the ufology becomes like this mercurial trickster, like carrier wave of something else. It is achieving some very unusual purpose. And there's a classic, you know, 1967 chapter in Flying Saucer Vision that's entitled The Dragon, the Holy Grail and the Flying Saucer. And in there, John Michel looks at accounts of blinding light and spectral visitations in the Arthurian romances, and looks at Virgin Mary visitations such as Fatima, and wondered if a flying saucer cult, was the basis of all religion. Light phenomena have been associated with sites of ancient sanctity. All of this might have been a known factor in their place and whatever activities occurred at them. And yeah, he looks at Catherine Morwood and her work that we recognise as the Glastonbury Zodiac is not as wild as Brinsley the Broad-Trench in this, but there are some really nice ideas that he brings forth, and they're evocative, and they do, although it's very much a period in time, the feeling tone associated with this, I think, lingers. And we can appreciate it. Whether or not some great sculpted message to the sky gods does lie below Glastonbury Tor, as Miss Morwood describes, there is no doubt that the whole area was particularly sacred to the early flying saucer cult. Well, obviously, that's a bit of a wild statement to make. From Glastonbury Tor, men left Earth to join the gods. This is real, 1967, 68 vintage. In the Central Somerset Gazette, in 1968, I think it was in July, they ran a whole feature on this idea of whether or not the tour was a sacrificial hill to the space gods. Don't think the Central Somerset Gazette has always been straightforward. Don't be willing to print a story like that far back. One of the indisputable classics of ufology, it's pretty much, I think it's 50 years old this year as well. Jacques Vallée, Passport to Begonia. I think for a lot of people, when they first read this book, nothing was ever quite the same again. Vallée goes into a cross-comparative study of fairy folklore, law surrounding incubus and succubus in medieval demonology and so forth, and seeing that there are a number of really interesting motifs that carry through into the evolving mythology and experience that's reported in modern ufology. There are, for example, these classic accounts in fairy lore of people who are essentially abducted. They see some strange mound in a field full of lights with little dancing people around, and they're enticed to go in, and then they just disappear, and they might come back decades later, and so on and so forth. There is some very distinct peculiarity there that is resonant with modern ufology. Around about the same time, we get the other great voice, John Keel, with Operation Trojan Horse. Keel's best known for the Mothman prophecies. The broad idea he puts forward is that ghosts, poltergeists, entities like Bigfoot, the whole realm of the paranormal is on a spectrum that includes all of the phenomenon of ufology, that it is essentially one and the same thing, that we, share our world with other beings on different levels of vibration, or whatever you want to call it. Now, in ufology, there's kind of a distinction between what you would call the nuts and bolts enthusiasts, people who talk about, this is physical craft that are actually made out of, some kind of metal or alloy, and they've flown directly from another planet, and they've got actual physical creatures that are aliens from another world in them. But there's a whole realm of utter high strangeness in ufology that's very, very like ghosts and spirits and poltergeists and fairy folk and so forth. Keel and Vallée together, they established this mode. This idea of, you might not be able to figure out the cause of all this, but when you observe the effects, there is some kind of spectrum going on in it. The 1969 edition of the famous hippie journal Gandalf's Garden is a really interesting thing. You can find this online very easily. You can can download it all as a CD-ROM or whatever, you can download it. There's an article in which they're asking, is 1969 to be the year of Atlantis? There's a piece on Glastonbury and when Jesus came to Glastonbury. There's actually a little article by Jeffrey Ash where he's suggesting that, Blake's Albion will be reborn when, the tribe, the brothers and sisters, gather together at Glastonbury. And there's an early presentation of Mary Cain's work on the Glastonbury Zodiac. If you saw it, it's like a little microcosm. It's a template of all her subsequent work. And of course, the greatest of all Earth Mysteries works, John Michel's view of Atlantis, came out in 1969. So much is in there. He doesn't talk in the same way about ufology. Ufology is kind of absent from this. He's already covered it in his earlier book. Perhaps from our point of view, the idea that dragon lore starts to become associated with layers, and in particular, the Michael line. Although we've now realised through the work of people like Yuri Leach that the Michael line was probably known about earlier. It's in the view over Atlantis that we first really hear about it. So Tony's a guy who starts off with a background of what you might call anarchistic activism. He's an early advocate of C&D in the early 60s. He broke into an American airbase as far back as 1963 in an attempt to disable some of the planes. He and his wife met through campaigning against the imprisonment of Nelson Mandela. This is 1964, man. This is a long, long time ago. He's getting arrested at political protests over and over again. He even started a fire in the foyer of the Dorchester Hotel as a statement against capitalism. As a young man, he works with he works at the London Evening News and in the Times. He corresponds with J.R.R. Tolkien. Working for the Times as a librarian just allows him the freedom to read and become, in a way, wherever he wants to, and he becomes convinced that there is a really true, eternal spiritual tradition of Britain that is best exemplified by William Blake. And when he read the Flying Saucer Vision, this opens him up to the ufological Earth Mysteries connection, and most importantly of all, the Glastonbury Zodiac. And he and Jan spent a lot of time around here in the late 60s, during the time of the early hippie arrivals, and meet up with John Michel and a number of other interesting people, as we'll see. So, okay, let's remember John Michel's advice about not really being able to fully, take on board the true causes of the UFO phenomenon, but what it affects. Tony Roberts has the classic experience. Now, all of this was written down in a book, a huge, great manuscript that was never published, and as part of the process of me writing my Glastonbury Zodiac and Earth Mysteries UFOlogy, I was the first person outside the Roberts household to see this manuscript for 40 years, and I was able to quote directly from it the experience that set the whole thing in motion. While driving with my wife one evening during the autumn of 1969, we were shown both a vision and a sign in the sky. We were driving south out of London towards Dorking and had reached the Tolworth roundabout on the Kingston bypass. It was not quite dark, the air was very clear, and there was as yet no trace of the moon. At the same time, both my wife and I saw a huge white disc shining in the sky in the middle distance ahead of us. It was about the size of a very large grapefruit, and as we slowed down to watch, its colour changed slightly to silvery gold with faint tinges of orange fire playing around the extreme edges. We slowed our car still more, and as we watched, we saw a string of small glowing discs appear on the left-hand side of the larger one. They flickered and twinkled with a pearly and opalescent glow, faintly mauve and very beautiful. After lining up in a perfectly straight formation, they gradually merged one by one into the larger disc. Whatever it was, suddenly, with tremendous speed and in complete silence, the huge object moved from in front of our car to behind it in a matter of seconds. We quickly stopped and got out. It now hung motionless in the distance, and as we looked up at it, a terrific feeling of peace, physical lightness and spiritual happiness came over us, leaving us deeply moved. The strange aerial object next began moving very swiftly towards us, pulsating faintly with a green light blazing on one side and a blue light on the other. It stopped again and hovered low in the sky to the northeast, and then began to move slowly, quartering the air in precise, sweepingly geometrical lines, rather like a fish darting through water. It was tracing a definite star pattern in the sky, which had now become dark, and as we stared in wonder, it yet again stopped and hung like an exquisite glowing jewel above us. Then suddenly it was gone. With unbelievable acceleration, it shot upwards into space and vanished into the now starry night. The whole sighting had lasted about 20 minutes, and yet it felt as though we'd been watching for hours. Many years later, in the memorial book of Phenomena from Atlantis to Avalon, Jan recalled how we sat and cried. For me, it felt as though I had glimpsed God in action. Although this was a mechanical activity, I was moved as though I had a religious experience. Now, something of the mixed blessings of such close encounters manifested literally just a few days later, when Tony gets knocked off his scooter by a car, and the injury sustained required 6 months off work. But what this means is that he's enabled to undertake a marathon writing and reading stint, fired up by his revelatory experience. He essentially has had some kind of download. So what you see him in this photograph with is his kind of hand-produced, enormous great manuscript. It's 300 pages, but if you printed it out as a normal-sized book, it'd be more like 500 pages. A work of historical synthesis and speculative imagination, which was provisionally entitled Giants in the Earth. And it's, I read it, it's wild. It's a wild mix that is firmly based on the existence of Mu and Atlantis. The lost continents are in there in considerable detail. And he's also a great advocate of fantasy literature, and he uses something of the novelistic format to convey a density of detail that he's got from loads and loads of sources. Radiant 15-foot tall aliens walk the Earth. After the continent of Mu was destroyed following a comet strike, they helped in the establishment of Atlantis. And after beginning with these lost continents, the second part of this work he called The Colonies of Atlantis, and this deals with Egypt and Britain and the Americas. There are other chapters that he was going to write that he never got around to. So he's got Princeton and Paul Trench's ideas in there. There are long quotes. And most importantly is the belief that the Glastonbury Zodiac is the work of Atlanteans. They initially arrived in Britain 20,000 years ago, at the time that settlements that had been founded in the times of Mu in this country had disappeared. And their presence is strongest in Ireland, and Cornwall and Somerset. Wherever you've got references in British folklore to giants and fairies and dragons and so forth, this is all basically concerning this in particular when it's about inundations of racist beings from the sea. Behind every megalithic stone there looms the shadow of a giant. Behind every giant there shines the imagery of a transcendent culture of divinely inspired beings. And he says, that the Great Pyramid was built by the magical powers of the Atlantean adepts and giants of 15,000 BC, using levitation, telekinesis, and vibrational manipulation of sound. It's an absolute, it's what? We can't take it as history, but I absolutely loved it when I read it. I was fired up for it, so that it landed totally right with me. Some of you might know this book. This is the first book that Tony Roberts published. Language traditions in ancient Britain. The whole lot of this has come verbatim from this massive motherlode. And likewise, so is the Thunder. There's still a lot of this book that has never been published. Now, what I find fascinating about it is if it had been published at that time, if he'd finished it, and if it had been published in 1971, as a pulp paperback, it would have taken its place alongside all this kind of stuff that we're so familiar with. And yet it is there. It's in the background of the sensibilities that came through in Glastonbury in that time, as we shall see. Now, during the period of the writing of Giants in the Earth, Tony and Jen had some other experiences with strange lights, this time on Glastonbury tour. There was a cafe in those days in Benedict Street. It kind of backed out the other way onto what we now call the car park opposite Proper Job. And there was a famous mural in that cafe depicting the Glastonbury Zodiac with the Michael line going through it. People hung out there, and the proprietor was Gino Gennaro, who's a guy who's really not left an awful lot of a trace behind. I've tried to find out more about him. Jan and Tony knew him and his wife, they hung out with him. And there was a wonderful experience where they were having a kind of picnic on the side of the tour, and Tony and Gino were kind of, blagging it a bit as like which one of them was the great magician. And while they were kind of having this conversation, literally earth lights, globules of light, plasma, whatever you want to call it, just came up out of the earth and started kind of floating around them. So that's, this is a drug-free episode from the Glastonbury of the late 60s and early 70s as a measure of what was going on during that time. And in 1979, Gino Gennaro published this extraordinary book, The Phenomena of Avalon, the story of this planet as recounted by the fairies. It's not the easiest book in the world to read, I can tell you that. Believe me, I've read it quite a few times, and I've tried to read it on other occasions and kind of abandoned it. It's difficult to work out what he's really saying out to him. But as far as we can tell, the way he sort of presents it is that he's encounters Venusians, stroke, fairies on Glastonbury tour, and receives a kind of Gnostic hermetic teaching. If you get the book, it's full of all kinds of esoteric artwork, full of all kinds of cosmological stuff. And he's chosen to, front the cover and on the back as well with artwork by William Blake. So this is a kind of extraordinary moment. I've talked about what Jack Valley said and what John Keel said about the continuity, the spectrum, if you like, the mysterious interface of fairy lore, of ufology. It's very difficult to pin any of these things down. There's a mysterious, mercurial something messing with our heads. This is a great Glastonbury example of that, and I would venture to say this sort of thing, is still going on in all sorts of ways. And as another measure of the mythology of the time, if you like, as Tony's coming to the end of his writing. In 1971, we have the first of the major Glastonbury festivals. There had been one in 1970, but in 1971, you know, the festival, which is filmed as Glastonbury Fair, is a real big deal in the town. And I've obviously got to throw in that this was quite a big deal in the career of a young guy who's already had a hit, but his career has sort of gone slightly backwards. David Bowie plays a legendary set at that particular festival at dawn. And our very own Mr. William Bloom has got a great story about how he carried Bowie's harmonium out for him to set up that gig. You know, that's pretty damn cool, I've got to say that. At this time, Tony and Jan go and check out the tour. They're up on the tour and they're looking over in the direction of the festival. And they just want to sort of check out where it is. Now, in terms of Glastonbury Zodiac, that general direction takes in the so-called Arthur figure, the centaur, you know. And Jan briefly sees, while standing on the tour looking out in the direction of the festival, a vision of a titanic fall, which is precisely that. This is in the painting by Osmond Kane. It shows the delineation of the, you know, the fields and the pathways and so forth to create that apparent figure. She literally saw this enormous being as tall as the sky rise up out of the earth. It was there for a matter of moments. But it really is. Now, here's a real joint in the earth. Here's the rebirth, you know, of Arthur and a whole Pendragon consciousness that is maybe linked in, you know, with flying saucers and so forth. All of this literally emerging out of the very earth at the time that we have this great eruption of the 1971 Glastonbury Festival, which has had such an enormous effect on this town and ultimately, you know, on the entire country. Now, when it comes to the, you know, the effects of the Roberts experiences, we've got this anthology. Famous anthology, a lot of you will know it, Glastonbury Ancient Avalon, New Jerusalem, a whole series of articles edited by Tony Roberts, a lot of stuff about the Glastonbury Zodiac, Mary Kane, once again going through the signs and sequence and so forth. You only get ufology mentioned really, really briefly. But the thing that's important, you know, this is the high watermark of acceptance of the idea of the Glastonbury Zodiac. You know, after that, people start to backpedal and think, well, yeah, there's no archaeology, there's no history, this is real. People backpedal a bit, but this is the high watermark. Tony Roberts would not have produced this anthology without his UFO experience. His UFO experience is absolutely central to the dynamism that manifests. It's kind of there in the background. All through that period of time, you know, the 70s in Glastonbury, this thing is kind of an undercurrent. You know, this thing that begins with Brimston and Paul Trench in the 1960s, this wild cosmic millennialism about Glastonbury and Atlantis and prophecies of the regeneration and so forth. It drives a lot of other things, and it's a real clear example that this anthology, which people are still buying and still reading now, is powered by that. But unless you know the hidden history, it's not always clear that that is the case. And here's Tony and Jan back in the days of Gothic Image promoting their work. And as many of you know, in a legendary transition, Tony Roberts died of a heart attack on Glastonbury tour during, I think it was an eclipse of the full moon in February 1990. So this kind of brings us back round to what the appropriate mindset is. You know, what is the appropriate response to this wild series of crazy ideas. It wouldn't seem outlandish to recommend to a lover of poetry, you know, reading course in the early 19th century romantics, Wordsworth, Keats, Shelley, Byron, and of course Blake. These people, they had some knowledge of British prehistory, of religious studies in general, that would seem now, in the light of recent scholarship, completely lacking, wrong-headed, bonkers even. You know, their sensibilities were obviously shaped by their times, the French Revolution, you know, the wars, etc. But we don't have to believe in the reality of a Druid Stonehenge to appreciate Blake's art and poetry. In Avalon of the Heart, the unfortunate, I think on the first page actually says that the poetry of the soul writes itself in Glastonbury, and I keep on coming back to this phrase, soul poetry. There's something about our mythology, our mythos of Arthur and Joseph Arimathea and the Grail and so forth, the beliefs about the mythological history of the Abbey. You can't pin it down, you can deconstruct the hell out of it. You know, there are many cynics that will happily tell you it's a complete load of nonsense, and yet there's something about that soul poetry that is a doorway into the numinous that allows us to access certain sensibilities that would otherwise not be available to us. It serves that purpose. Now, I believe that in the works of, you know, John Foster Forbes and Olive Pixley's visions, in Brinsley the Portrait, certainly John Michel, and in the worldview demonstrated in Anthony Roberts' Giants of the Earth, and in the experience that befell the Roberts near the Kingston bypass, that there is something of the same soul poetry, that there is something that serves us, that these ideas, however crazy they might seem, enable us to engage with something that is vitally important. Some mercurial force was at work for all this, loosening the mind-forged manacles, opening the doors of perception enough to awaken us from single vision. We know we can comprehensively deconstruct the mythology of Glastonbury in terms of history. You know, don't think I don't know that. But it's this elusive something else that matters. And that something else, I feel, you know, is still with us. It works through the Earth Mysteries, it works through ufology, it works through poetry, it works through mysticism, it works through the whole magic and mystery of Glastonbury. And I feel, you know, that it very much has worked through the whole inspiration and manifestation of last year's William Blake Festival and Blakestock now, here, this weekend. And so, it's very strange, you know, in my book, William Blake and the Glastonbury Gnosis, I've gone back to it. I wrote it at a fever pitch last year. I almost didn't know what I was doing. I threw the whole paint pot at the wall. There was a lot of stuff about the ufology and the whole upheaval of the 60s that I chucked in there, and the continuity now that I feel from when I've stood on this stage 4 years ago promoting Glastonbury, Zodiac and Earth Mysteries UFOlogy. It's profoundly mysterious, it's profoundly wonderful. I hope you've caught